We are back. Solonomics, we are back. We are back with another edition of Solonomics. This is Mumi Isfael. And we're going to talk today about this article that you see up on the screen. So I'm going to give everybody a quick second to come in before I just go ahead and dive right in it. I saw the article come up, and I was busy today, but I said I wanted to read it live on air and then probably have a little brief discussion about what it is we're seeing here. So let me know if you can see it, and then we will get into it. Hold on one second. One moment. It's Dallas police say Sean Jefferson, 20 years old, was fatally shot by her boyfriend after years of abuse. Could her death have been presented? I guess it stuck out to me because the discussion we were having yesterday about the review of the Sandra Bland situation and the question of whether or not we were paying attention or whether or not people were paying attention to what led up to what ultimately became her demise, you know what I'm saying, her untimely demise. And so I guess that kind of like snagged my attention because the question the writer Melissa Jelson wrote was, could her death have been prevented? Are we paying attention? Could we avoid certain things, or are we just passing it off as normalized? So full disclosure, I did not read the fullness of the article. I kind of wanted to read it live so that I can I don't want to say kill two birds with one stone, but I could address more than one issue. And I take it this may be her mother, right? So Sharon Jefferson holds her grandson, yes. Ray, police say her pregnant daughter, Delshawn, wow. Okay, I wasn't ready. Okay. Pregnant daughter was fatally shot by her boyfriend in September. So let me just make sure everybody's seeing the screen. Her boyfriend in September. Yeah, everybody's seeing the screen. Hello. Aduku, welcome to the discussion. So we're going to read it, and then we'll have a little exchange afterwards. Dallas, this was published today. Dallas, before she died, Delshawn Jefferson tacked a certificate to her bedroom wall. The piece of paper edged in gold like a diploma was proof that her boyfriend had completed an anger management program. For Delshawn, 20, it was more than that. It was a promise that her boyfriend was getting better. Lajaris Rainey, 24, wasn't going to hurt her anymore. The young Dallas couple was expecting their second child, a sister for their toddler son, whom they called Ray Ray. A white crib was set up in the corner of the bedroom, ready for the baby. Delshawn never got a chance to meet her. Earlier this fall, police say Rainey shot Delshawn inside her bedroom when she was 8. Man. When she was 8 months pregnant, she was killed in front of her son. Like I said, I did not read. I saw the article, I saved it, but I didn't read. So if you see me take pauses, that's just the process. Doctors at Baylor University Medical Center performed an emergency cesarean section and rushed her baby to the neonatal intensive care unit. Rainey was arrested and charged with Delshawn's murder. In death, Delshawn became one of the 3 women killed by their boyfriends, husbands, and lovers every day in the United States. Wow. Domestic violence does not discriminate, and victims span all races, ages, ethnicities, and religion. The suffering, though, is not equally distributed. In the United States, Black women face higher rates of domestic violence than do women of all other races except Native women. In Dallas County, the most likely type of person to be killed by a romantic partner is a quote unquote Black woman, aged 20 to 29, just like Delshawn. So called Black women are 4 times more likely than their quote unquote white peers to be murdered by a boyfriend or girlfriend, and twice as likely to be killed by a spouse. Wow, these statistics are crazy. And they are 7 times more likely to be slain while pregnant than white women. Experts say this is not because so-called black men are more violent, rather, black women are more vulnerable to domestic violence due to a constellation of factors, including high rates of poverty, lack of access to resources, and systemic racism within systems designed to help victims of abuse. So the people they're supposed to be going to, there's racism within that system that people, you feel as though, what am I going there for? Are they really going to help me? Since the passage of the Violence Against Women Act in 1994, the central response to domestic violence in the U.S. has been criminal. Victims are told to call the cops, press charges, and help prosecutors put their abusers behind bars. But relying on the police can leave Black women facing an impossible quandary. How can they trust a historically racist criminal justice system, one that systematically imprisoned their brothers and fathers to protect them? One moment, please. I will be right back. Sorry about that. They had turned up the thing. I couldn't hear. All right. And that's her, 20 years old. She's young. Wow. Left behind. 2 weeks after her daughter's death, Sharon Jefferson, 44, sat on her couch and burst into tears. She was there the day Delshawn died. Man, dang, son. In the house she was still living in, and she couldn't stop replaying it in her mind. The shriek of gunshots, her daughter's eyes rolling back in her head. The house was full of ghosts. Sharon wanted to move, or Sharon wanted to move and fast, but money was tight. The carpet in the hallway was still splashed with bloodstains when Huffington Post visited in early October. Every time Sharon walked past the kitchen, she said she expected to see her daughter standing over the stove. Delshawn was, and I hope I'm saying her name right, Delashawn was always cooking, she said, broccoli and cheese casseroles or thick gumbo with cornbread. She described her daughter as a homebody, a generous, smiley young woman who was good at doing hair and took great pride in her identity as a mother. Sharon said she was unaware that Rainey was abusing her daughter. She'd seen him get jealous or angry on a few occasions, but she considered him to be like a son. Whatever they did behind closed doors, she said. I never saw no bruises. The relationship. Delshawn called Rainey, quote, husband, and he called her, quote unquote, wifey. And though they were not technically married, they had been together more or less since she was 13 and he was 17. Okay. On social media, Delshawn projected an image of a happy coupledom, posting dozens of photos of Rainey and herself. I love me husband. He gives me life, she wrote on Facebook. Once in a while, Delshawn alluded to romantic problems when she shared inspirational quotes. They were often about persevering through hard times, standing by your man. She called herself his quote unquote ride or die. The dangers in that I'm not going to comment. I'm just keep reading. In real life, Rainey was frequently in trouble with the law and had a history of violence. In 2012, he was accused of armed robbery. A woman told police he showed up at her house with a gun and told her to, okay, fellatio, S his D, punched her in the head and stole her Sony PlayStation 3, according to a court document. Alrighty then. The state later dismissed the case after the victim changed her mind. She didn't want to testify against him. It is impossible to know when Rainey first turned violent towards Delshawn. But by the time she was 16, a witness called police to report a domestic dispute involving the couple. It was 2014, And when the police arrived, Rainey was gone. Delshon told them she didn't want to pursue charges. Quote, I just wish it was me and him in this world, she wrote on Facebook the following day. Her sister, LaJoyce Robertson, 21, said Delshon didn't talk about abuse in their relationship. She kept her business to herself, she said. Domestic violence wasn't really discussed in their community, she added. Women and girls were afraid of being judged or having their partners judged, so they stayed quiet. Why, quote unquote, Black women don't report. While victims of all races experience shame about domestic violence, there is a deep culture of silence in so-called Black communities, says Zoe Flowers, a domestic abuse advocate and author of From Ashes to Angel Dust, A Journey Through Womanhood. One reason in that is that many Black women are socialized from a young age to believe they must be strong all the time. Mm-hmm. We are taught that telling your business, asking for help, showing vulnerability, these are signs of weakness, Flowers says. We think, sorry about that. Sorry about that. We think we can handle whatever comes our way because that is the expectation. Many so-called Black women are also taught to protect the race at all costs. She said, that means victims of domestic violence may stay quiet to shield their communities from additional negative attention. There's so much to say. I'm just keep reading. People already feel like so-called Black men are more violent, that so-called Black women are loud. All of these stereotypes, Flowers says, you don't want to open your community up for more scrutiny. There's also a general attitude that women should stand by their partners no matter what, she added. Why? Because the world is hard on Black men, so-called Black. The legal system incarcerates 5 times more Black people than whites. People already feel that so-called Black men are more violent, and then that's the quote. That's the outtake right there. It's not uncommon for so-called Black victims of domestic violence to rescue themselves from the criminal justice system, said Beth Ritchie, professor of African American Studies and Gender and Women's Studies at the University of Illinois at Chicago. There's a feeling in the Black communities that the only time violence against Black women is taken seriously when it can be used to feed the arrest and detention of Black men, Ritchie said. I'll read that again. There's a feeling in the so-called Black communities that the only time violence against Black women is taken seriously is when it can be used to feed the arrest and detention of so-called Black men, Ritchie said. That belief can sometimes lead women to make decisions that are not in the interest of their own health and safety, she added. When so-called Black women do involve the police, it can open them up to arrest themselves, said Greta Gardner, the deputy director of Ujima Inc., the National Center of Violence Against Women in the Black community. There's the pathology about Black women that we are kind of combative. It goes, quote unquote, angry Black woman trope, Goddess said. We aren't seen as true victims. And again, I have been and continue to research this thought of the angry Black woman syndrome book is on Amazon. I've discussed this many times, did some research into this trope that she's speaking about. And we aren't seen as true victims, okay? Another major reason why so-called Black women don't report abuse is economics, says Lisanne. I'm just messing up everybody's name today, my apologies. Lisa Lynn Jacobs, an expert on the intersection of race and domestic violence. Black women are more than twice as likely to live in poverty than so-called white women. They are disproportionately single heads of households and often don't have the financial means to leave their abusers. They may not have enough for first and last month rent to get their own apartment, she said, or they may rely on their partner to provide childcare. When so-called Black women call the police, some risk being evicted by their landlords due to nuisance ordinances, quote unquote, which penalize the victim for crimes committed in their homes. Reporting an abusive partner can mean ending up homeless. But so-called Black women have witnessed how seemingly minor interactions with police can quickly have life-changing consequences, Jacob added. Quote unquote, African American communities have historically been over police, she said. Quote, it is completely reasonable for Black women to worry that somehow the situation could go sideways and their children end up with child protective services. Spiraling out of control. So as you can see, the writer of this article went into great detail to not only highlight the case, but to highlight its place historically in this country, which is greatly appreciated. By the time Delshawn was 18, she was desperate enough to call the police herself. In February 2016, the couple got in an argument over the phone. According to the court document, after they hung up, Delshawn later told police Rennie showed up at her house and knocked on the door. When she opened it, she said he grabbed the back of her neck, scratching her, then pulling her out of the apartment and smacked her on the side of her head with a handgun. Delshawn was able to get away and call 911 from inside her house. When she went back outside, he started shooting at her, she said. Police officers took photos of Delshawn's neck and filed an arrest warrant for Rainey, who had fled the scene. He left a gun behind, which police confiscated. They also asked Delshawn if Rainey had impeded her breathing when he grabbed her neck, as research has found that men who strangle are more likely to go on to kill their intimate partners. She said no. The couple reconciled soon after, but the peace was short-lived. 3 weeks later, Rainey assaulted Delshawn again. She was spending the night at Rainey's house, which he shared with his mother. Delshawn later told police she was asleep in Rainey's bed when he woke her, demanding sex. She said no. That upset him, she said, and he knocked her to the ground and began beating her. Alrighty. Her screams got the attention of Rainey's mother, who ran to help her. So did Rainey's sister's boyfriend, who eventually pulled Rainey off of her. Undeterred, Rainey grabbed a gun from underneath his bed and started firing at random, threatening to shoot everyone. One bullet grazed his mother's thumb, but no one else was hit. This time, Rainey was taken to the Dallas County Jail. For the two separate incidents involving Delshawn, he faced 4 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, charges that could bring up to 20 years behind bars. But Delshawn had her own worries. The 18-year-old discovered she was pregnant. Another chance. For those who just joined us, we're reading the article published today on the Huffington Post, The Quiet Crisis, Killing Black Women. Another chance. As Rennie sat in jail, prosecutors struggled to build a solid case against him. None of the witnesses who saw Rennie assault Delshawn wanted to testify against him. His defense attorney, Kenneth Weatherspoon, told Huffington Post, ultimately, Delshawn didn't cooperate. The family members were all pretty adamant that they didn't want the state to prosecute him, Weatherspoon said. It's also highly likely that Delshawn was too terrified to testify. Her sister Robinson says she didn't know about the charges of Delshawn. I feel like I'm saying the name wrong. Delshawn's choice not to cooperate, but she speculated that she was probably scared. Although Delshawn spoke with police on at least 3 separate occasions about Rainey's alleged abuse, it appeared she did not receive any domestic violence services. In that case, her experience is typical. Most women killed by intimate partners in Dallas County never got a protective order or stayed at a domestic violence shelter. Especially in poor communities of color like South Dallas, where Delshawn lived, victims of abuse are not likely to access resources, said Mary May Kaba, an anti-violence activist and prison abolitionist. They might not know such options exist or may feel alienated by the racial basis of people who provide services. Kaba believes community accountability is the key to addressing domestic violence. Everyone who can should sign up for training at domestic violence organization to learn how to safely intervene when they see harm occurring in their own community, she said. The prison industrial complex has actually de-skilled everyone in intervention, she said. It makes it so easy to pick up the phone and call 911 as your form of action. The shift has happened on a societal societal level, she said, with communities addressing the internal violence instead of turning a blind eye. There's no magic bullet, Kava said. It is us who are going to have to change the culture to keep people safe. I know that's not comfortable for people, but you know what? It's blinking uncomfortable to be abused. Okay, for those who know I don't curse and things, so I gotta put in a little blink, blink. Delshawn, Delashon, I think it may be Delashon. Well, forgive me. 18 and pregnant with Rainey's child decided to stand by him. She visited him in the county jail every week. Her sister Robinson said on Facebook that Delashon posted photos of her pregnant belly along with a quote that expressed that it felt like to have her partner behind bars. For those who have just joined us, who have just joined us, thank you for joining us. Always keep it clean and respectful as we have discussions. The Quiet Crisis Killing Black Women, reading a Huffington Post article published today. Where am I? She quoted, "I didn't make it all this way alone," the message says. "He's been right there with me the whole time, incarcerated or not. We're a team." In October 2016, she gave birth to Ray Ray. It was a lot of work providing for a baby while the father was in jail, but Delashon embraced the challenge, Robinson said. She was a very good mother, she said, and she was handling it on her own. But she wanted her child's father to be in his life. She was going to do nothing but wait until he got out. In November 2017, Rainey was set free in a plea deal after a year and 8 months behind bars. He pleaded guilty to 4 charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. In return for 4 years of deferred adjunction probation, that meant his charges would essentially be dismissed if he stayed out of trouble for 4 years and completed the conditions of his release. Weatherspoon, Rainey's then attorney, said the deal was the best outcome that prosecutors can get given the circumstances of the case. "I think the district attorney took the position that it was probably better to get him on some type of probation instead of going to trial and not getting any kind of conviction at all," he said. In a statement, Kimberly Leach, a spokeswoman for Dallas County District Attorney Office, said it's not uncommon for first-time offenders like Rainey to be placed on deferred adjunction. In this case, she said all the witnesses, including Delashon, said they wanted no jail time for Rainey and indicated they were not on board with prosecution if the case went to trial. They pleaded for him to get help, probation, and not go to prison. "I'm trying so hard not to put my 2 cents in. I'm just trying so hard, y'all." She said, "They represented to our office that they had no safety concerns and did not want stay away orders. They believed his issues could be dealt with through medication and treatment." Rainey's probation conditions required him to undergo drug testing and barred him from owning or purchasing a gun, but they didn't require him to attend a batterer intervention program, a class specifically designed for abusive partners. Leach said this was because his family asked that he not have to do so. You know what? Instead, the court referred him to anger management classes. "That was the wrong call," said Paige Flink, CEO of Family Peace, Dallas' largest domestic violence agency. "Anger management does not address the issues of power and control that exist in abusive relationships," she said. "Batterer intervention programs do." In Flink's opinion, Rainey presented as an extremely high-risk offender. He had twice fired a gun during a domestic violence incident. "The access to guns is a real problem," Flink said, pointing to a study that found victims are 5 times more likely to be killed if the abuser is armed. Less than a year later, Delashon was dead. Now we're going to go into the incident. This is some wild stuff right here. Rainey and Delashon reunited as soon as he was released. Within a few months, she was pregnant again. Her family said it was hard to tell how she really felt about Rainey, if she was in love or worried about her future or scared of him or a mix of all three. Her sister said she sensed that something was wrong a few times, but Delashon said everything was okay. "Out of respect, I left it alone," Robinson said. Delshawn, who had dropped out of high school in the 11th grade, planned to get her GED and pursue a nursing degree after she gave birth to a second child. Her mother said, "I was going to watch the baby while she goes to school," Sharon said. On Facebook, Rainey played the part of committed partner and father. He posted photo after photo of Ray Ray and declared his love for Delshawn. On Valentine's Day, he bought Delshawn a gift basket with a pink teddy bear. "Happy Valentine's Day, babe. We've been at this blink like 7 years strong." Heart wheelie chair, um, present bow tie, he wrote. In May, he took Delshawn to the doctor for a checkup, posting a photo of the two of them in the waiting room. She was due in October. On an ordinary Sunday in September, everything changed. It is a day Robinson will never forget. As she recalled it, her sister was in the kitchen cooking a turkey leg. Rainey was in Delshawn's bedroom, Ray Ray playing with his cousin in the hallway. Talking turns, taking turns riding a tricycle when the kids began to quarrel. Delshawn carried Ray Ray into her bedroom for a timeout. She closed the door behind her. Rainey, Delshawn, and Ray Ray were in the bedroom for a few minutes out of sight. Robinson remembered playing on her phone, wasting time. Then she heard yelling. Delshawn was screaming her name, pleading for help. Robinson burst into Delshawn's bedroom, she told Huffington Post, and found Rainey attacking her sister. She jumped on him, and then so did her fiance, 25-year-old Devron Sanders. Rainey pulled out a gun. It's unclear where he got it. Just as he had on at least two other occasions, he started to shoot. What is wrong with this dude? Only this time, Robinson said his bullets connected. Two went through Saunders' shoulder, another went through Delshawn's backside. Another went through Delshawn's back as she was running out the door. Ray Ray watched everything. Delshawn fell down in the hallway. Her mother ran to her and held her, squeezing her wrist to feel her pulse. "I thought I'd keep her safe here," she said. "I was supposed to protect her." At the hospitals, doctors performed a C-section to deliver Delshawn's baby. At 20, Delshawn died of her gunshot wounds. A new life. Wow. After 3 months, or almost 3 months after Delshawn's death, her family is awash in grief, throbbing with questions that could never be answered. Rainey, who has been charged with murder, is being held in jail with bond set at $350,000. His attorney, Douglas Scopmeyer, said his client has mental health condition. You know what? And asked the judge that he be reserved until he is examined by a forensic psychiatrist. He faces up to life in prison if convicted. The newborn baby girl is named, oh man, this is, y'all gonna have me crying on this joint. Wow. They name, they named her after her mother. Her family says she looks just like her. Baby Delshawn has been released from the hospital and is still recovering. Her family is raising money for her online. Robinson is struggling to accept that her sister is gone for good. She tries not to think about it, she told Huffington Post. It's too much. Ray Ray, yo, judgment, yo. Ray Ray keeps asking for his mother, she said. He's too young to know, and yet he knows she's not coming back. Sharon Jefferson cannot help but wonder how her daughter's death could have been avoided. Did it have to be this way? And why did no one seem to care? Right after the shooting, local news outlets descended on Sharon's house, writing about the tragedy and how the baby granddaughter was miraculously saved. Now everyone was gone. They were left to manage their pain alone. Every other day, Sharon said, she goes to visit Delshawn's grave and brings an offering, a bunch of flowers or balloons. She thinks about the good time she had with her daughter cooking and going to church and running errands, the little stuff or errands. Even though she's eager to move out of the house where her daughter died right in front of her, she's worried about forgetting things. She has so many memories with her daughter in that house, she doesn't want to lose them. It was Delshawn's birthday this week, she told Huffington Post in a recent phone call. That was extra hard. It I take it one day at a time. I miss her so much, she said. It's hard for me to get over it. I don't think I'll ever get over my child's death. That this story right here, son. I told you I this story right here. Thank those for sticking with us. This is Amuna Yisrael Solonomics. We're having a discussion on this article that came out today in the Huffington Post. The quiet crisis killing Black women. It's talking about domestic violence, and the question that it asks is, could her death have been prevented? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What could have been done to possibly prevent her death? We were speaking about something of this nature yesterday, the possible things that could be done. And I'll put the link in the box. It's, first of all, many condolences to her family. May the soul of that young woman find peace. And may the Most High be with her children. There's so many things in just reading this article that were red flags along the way, that were signs that another course of action should have been taken. And because of the conditioning, because of the brokenness, because of the fears, economic condition, emotional, mental, spiritual condition, we bear the pain and continue to be stigmatized by society and have a fear of stepping outside of this box that historically many melanated women have to. And I don't like saying Black, so this is why every time you hear me reading the article, like, why should you keep saying that? Many melanated women were forced into in order to survive. So, there's so many things in retrospect. First of all, she's 13 years old. It's saying 13 years old with a 17-year-old man, and ultimately ends up dropping out of high school. So the beginning of discussion is, Mother Sharon, why did you allow your 13-year-old to get in a full-blown relationship? When 13, what are you in, 7th grade? When she's in 7th grade. Now, and I'm going to read the comments. I'm going to come to the comments. That would be the first thing for me. What's going on in the household? She's vulnerable and impressionable. So now she has a soul tie. If this person already had pre-existing issues, he's already into her consciousness at a very young age, and she's bonded to him in a traumatic space, because apparently, like they're revealing, he didn't just start abusing her. And it is a power struggle, especially when you get into maladaptive relationships so young. And what happens oftentimes is, in that space, if you try to navigate outside of that abusive situation, it can be violent. And that's what we saw in this space, that it became ultimately violent. I would say that the question they're asking, I'm just looking, because if we read stuff like that and just be like, this is just really sad, and not take anything from it, then again, like I said yesterday, it's in vain. And we don't want the lives of our brothers and sisters to go in vain. Even when we see tragedy, it's hopefully that we're able to get some understanding out of it. Could her death have been prevented? Whether she was looking for a father figure or a male figure, I don't know. The article doesn't speak. Did it say about upbringing, but we see her mother and we don't see her father. So she could have been in need of a male figure in her life. We see that Sue says, yes, there were plenty of missed opportunities. I agree with you. Um, Adaku says, change the whole brainwashing of Black women who think they don't deserve to be treated with love and respect, and then to change the indoctrination of covering up for men who hurt them. Correct. That's another one. Society says you take the brunt of it. And people say, why do you keep talking about slavery? Because that's where the trauma occurred. That's where the injury occurred massively. And that's where the maladaptive behavior. Before that, you were in another space on another continent and you had systems in place. You had families, you had villages, you had what you would call leaders, you had councils, you had spaces where even though certain things like this happen, to the degree that is happening where the feminine principle or the woman is not protected, it was exasperated in this trauma space. So because the woman wasn't protected and she now, who was supposed to be protected, had to be the protector, she had to go in front of the man to a certain degree and shield him and go in front of the child and shield him. She's still in that position. She's still carrying that on her shoulders. She's still the brunt of everything. Both men and women were in slavery, but she had to be in slavery and be a mother. You see, slavery took away the ability for the masculine principle to provide and be that provider and protector, right? Because the master was going to give you the food. And as long as you were beneficial to the master, then you were going to eat and you were going to have shelter. So the man, to a certain degree, he can impregnate the woman and not have to worry about the responsibility of rearing the woman because she belonged to someone else, and that responsibility fell on the slave master. But the woman, she was not only a slave, she had to still bear child. She had to still bring forth seed. You understand? And so she never was necessarily relieved of her duties. She not only had to take care of her children, but she had to take care of the slave master's children as well, and plus go to work. You understand? And so that came down through the ages where now you don't want to, as we saw the missed opportunity, as Sue said in this discussion, you don't want to give him up to the police because you know that they may going to be abuse him and you know that he's going to be helpless. So now you are putting yourself as a sacrifice. The melanated woman is sacrificing herself for the well-being of the nation, and still being expected to do everything else that she's required to do. Again, here we are building bricks without straw. Okay, so that's another missed opportunity. For those who just joined us, we're reading this article. This article, man. So again, domestic abuse is real, and it's about a power struggle. This is why I said I want to talk about toxic relationships. And at 13, what would she have known? At 13, now she's at 19, 20 years old, pregnant at 18 with the individual from 13. What would she have known? What tools would she have had to be able to navigate this situation? What information would she have had? She kept it to herself. That means she internalized it. If her mother, and sister are claiming that they didn't know that their sister and daughter were being abused. Were they paying attention? You know, if the dude is ready to pull out a gun on multiple occasions, that's not something that can be easily hidden. Another missed opportunity, again, is when you had an opportunity to allow him to deal with the consequences of his actions. When we try to relieve people of the consequences of this actions, what we tell them is it is okay for you to do what you do, and you're not gonna get any repercussions for it. And actually, that's what they did. She included, because when they allowed for her to say, "Do you want to testify?" No, they want to make it go away, but the problem still exists. So the people around him, in and around him, kind of aided him in this very sick and twisted type of behavior. And after the fact, they want to say he was trouble. When he nearly shot his mom's finger off, that was trouble. So even the mother and the sister and those who were there, why would you still allow this to go on and not think that something of this magnitude would happen? The next thing, next opportunity, was the willingness, as was shared, of her just wanting to accept. And I understand how she could be in that space because she was so young, when they first started, where she's claiming him as husband and he's claiming her as wife, but you don't have any of the benefits of being husband or wife, right? So it's this whole wifey type, my husband type situation, but you and your children are not necessarily protected. Furthermore, at 17, what could he have really done for a young girl at 13? He's a child himself at 17. So when you look at other cultures who still have some semblance of social norms intact, the male is not ready to take on a family until he has shown that he is able to sustain himself. I'll say that again. When you look at other cultures, I've said this before. In my off time, like I really have off time, but I watch Nigerian movies and Ghanaian movies, West African movies, Nollywood, basically, for many things. One of which is to look at culture in a different space. And again, one of the things that you see is the male cannot acquire a female, say he wants to get married, unless he's going to go around the corner, but he cannot say, you're going to be my wifey in a traditional sense, unless he has gone through the proper stages. He has to approach the family. He has to show that he has the ability to maintain himself and a family, because that's ultimately what he's doing, taking on responsibility for himself and the family. So one of the things that is missing a lot in our culture is this acceptance and this letting go of our daughters to anybody who comes and says, I like your daughter, she's nice. The parents are not asking the necessary questions. Son, where do you work? Son, what are you into? What are your plans for my daughter? How do you imagine to maintain her? She's only 13. Where do you think you're going with her? Right? All of these questions are not asked. Oftentimes the man is in his 35, 40, where he's learned to deal with his own self. So that, because if he had anger management problems and you are taking on responsibility of a child, of a woman, and now another child on the way, where do you work? What do you do? One of the reports says he tried to rob a woman for a PlayStation 3 or something of that nature. He was still a child himself. And so now he turns around and looks to abuse the woman because she, to him, is weaker than him, and she's under his thumb and under his control. And ultimately, this young lady lost her life, which is difficult to process. You know what I'm saying? So if we see, in short, I'm not going to stay long today. If we see domestic violence happening, I know sometimes, like they said in this article, our people are ashamed, especially women. You want to cover it up. You want to think that if you love the person, it's going to go away. If you comply, it's going to go away. I'm here to tell you, no. When you have a type of relationship that is maladaptive, such as this power struggle where you have the intimidator and the person who's being intimidated, the person wants to show themselves or see themselves as being all powerful and being able to control you. And the way in which they're controlling you is through fear, whether it be verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, right? All of these ways in which we see that when one of the instances here is when he's demanding her body. And if she declines, then he gets upset. That was the one instance when he pulls out the gun, I believe the second time. So it just doesn't go away. And I know it's difficult, as they said, it's difficult when you don't have spaces to go. It's difficult when economic issues are playing into why you can't go or why you can't move or the fear. So education is very key. And there's a possibility of him seeing that because there's a time where a woman gets to a spot where she's like, all right, dude, I'm going to take care of me and mine. And if she planned it to go back to school, we don't know what his information or concern was with that. It would be losing power over her. If she plans to go back to school and finish her GED and get herself back on track, a lot of times the masculine, when he's abusive in that way, he wants to see you crippled. He doesn't want, that's an unhealthy male. He doesn't want to see you viable. And the reality is both parties, the masculine and feminine, have to be viable in order to come together, to work together, to do what needs to be done. And if you're in a relationship where the person is trying to cow you down or suppress you, or, you know, just lower your self-esteem, that is abusive. And it usually starts in that area. You so dumb, or you so stupid, or nobody else will want you, or it goes along these lines. These are all the warning signs. And like I said, for being so young, where were her protectors? For being so young, where were her, you know, going forward? I pray that we take these lessons, share these stories, and looking at our environments in our own homes, and try to do the things that will help to lessen this type of stuff. Necessarily calling the police, for some it's a last resort when it's all the way out of control and you can't put it back in order again. And then she's concerned, and there's the guilt trip. I also see people talk about on social media the guilt trip of, oh, it's wrong to put the melanated man on child support because it's so difficult for him. You see what I'm saying? So she's supposed to suffer, and she's supposed to go to welfare, and she's supposed to go to the government, and he's supposed to, just walk around and say it's hard, and you should understand that. It's all of these things that play into why we have issues in relationships and issues in communities, and they need to be spoken about on a continuum, as well as with real life solutions. And one of them is being honest with ourselves. So with that said, thank everybody for tuning in. I'll put the link if you missed the reading of the article in the box. I'm going to look up the book that they said she had written, and I'll be back so that we can talk more about current events. This was a current event, so we'll talk more about current events, health, healing, life, progress, all that good stuff. So thank everybody for tuning in. Simone Israel, Solonomics 101.